My best friend moved in with the ex who made me lose my baby. Now she wants me to forgive them. There's no clean way to start this. No soft intro or pretty words that can dress up what happened to me. I lost a baby. I lost my future. I lost my sense of safety. And all of it started with a man named Zach. And now? Now he's dating the one person I thought would always protect me. My best friend. Let me take you back to the beginning, because if I don't explain how deep it went, you'll never understand the way it shattered me. I met Zach when I was 23. I had just moved to Austin after finishing my degree and landing a junior editor job at a mid-sized publishing firm. I was fresh out of a boring long-term relationship and not really looking for anything serious. But Zach, he had that pull. That messy, magnetic confidence that made people lean in. He was handsome, smart, and funny in a way that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. And when he wanted you, it felt like sunlight. For the first few months, everything was a dream. He cooked dinner, left sweet notes on my bathroom mirror, bought me books he said reminded him of me. He even got along with Jenna, my best friend since middle school. That alone felt like a green light. Jenna was fiercely protective. If she liked someone, it usually meant something. But looking back, that was the first red flag. Zach didn't just charm Jenna, he studied her. Listened to the things we joked about. Memorized the way I'd talk about our sleepovers, our traditions, how she was like my sister. And he mirrored it back at me like he was saying, I can give you everything she does, and more. The control didn't start with bruises. It started with questions. Why are you wearing that dress to work? You said it was a casual office. You're really close with Jenna. Don't you think it's kind of immature to still have a best friend at your age? Do you really need to work late again? Or are you just trying to avoid me? And slowly, bit by bit, I stopped pushing back. He never shouted. Never hit me. Not at first. It was more subtle than that. Before we go further, don't forget to like this story, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss what happens next. If I was upset, he'd say I was being too sensitive. If I cried, he'd sigh and leave the room. If I tried to explain how I felt, he'd quote therapy articles at me like he was the expert, and I was just some emotional wreck in need of fixing. I started to feel like I was losing my grip on reality. Then the pregnancy happened. Unplanned, unexpected, and honestly, at first, terrifying. But once the shock wore off, I started to imagine it. I pictured tiny socks, little giggles, Sunday mornings with pancakes and cartoons. I thought maybe, this could be a fresh start. Maybe if he saw that we were becoming a family, he'd soften. He didn't. Zach changed the moment I told him. He smiled, that too wide, artificial smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and said, wow, okay, that's a lot, but we'll figure it out. And I believed him. The next day, he was cold, distant. He started staying out later, ignoring my texts. When I asked if he was okay, he'd say, I'm not the one whose body's being hijacked, Rachel. 2 weeks later, he shoved me. It wasn't hard. Not enough to leave a mark, but enough to take my breath away. We were arguing about baby names. Yes, baby names, and I said I wanted something classic. He made a joke about naming our kid Debbie after his ex, and I snapped back. You know what? At least Debbie probably didn't have to deal with this sack. He stood up so fast I barely saw him move and pushed me backwards, not into a wall, not hard, but just enough. Enough to feel the shift in the room. The line had been crossed, and I knew I had to leave. I stayed with Jenna that night, curled up on her couch with a bag of pretzels and a tear-stained face, and she held me the whole time. She said she'd help me get out. She told me, you are not going back. I don't care what he says. And for a while, I believed her. The next few weeks were hell. Doctor appointments, work stress, 1,000 tangled emotions about the baby. But I was doing it. I was pulling myself out. And then, I miscarried. It was early, just shy of 12 weeks. I started spotting at work, went to the ER, and the nurse's face told me everything before the doctor even came in. Gone. Just like that. I remember staring at the ceiling and thinking, God, I didn't even get to hear a heartbeat. I called Jenna from the hospital. She didn't pick up. I called again. And again. Nothing. Zach showed up instead. The nurse said he was listed as my emergency contact. I'd forgotten to change it. He came in like nothing had happened. Like we were still together. He brought a stuffed animal and sat beside me like we were some loving couple grieving a shared loss. I couldn't even look at him. I told the nurse to kick him out. And that was the last time I saw him for a long time. Jenna texted me 3 days later. I'm so sorry. I had to take my mom to a specialist and totally spaced. Are you okay? I should have known. Should have questioned how she just disappeared. But I was too wrecked. Too tired. Too broken to fight about it. So I said I was fine. And I kept saying that for months. I moved to Boston to take a new job. Therapy, work, sleep, repeat. I stopped calling people. I let the grief eat me slowly because it was the only thing that felt honest. Jenna and I faded. Not all at once. Just slowly. Messages spaced out. Calls missed. Birthdays forgotten. I told myself it was natural. We were growing up, growing apart. Then, 6 months ago, I saw it. A photo. Posted on Connectus. Jenna and Zach. Together. Arms around each other. Her smiling like he was some big inside joke. Him looking directly at the camera like he knew exactly what he was doing. The caption? Sometimes life brings people back around when they're finally ready for love. And my stomach dropped. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just a friend dating an ex. This was my best friend smiling with the man who destroyed me, the man who made me question my sanity, who watched me lose our baby and made it about him. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I sat on my couch for almost 2 hours staring at that picture. I must have blinked 1,000 times, thinking maybe it would change, maybe it was old, maybe it was fake. But it wasn't. It was real. Jenna, my best friend since I was 13, had her arms wrapped around the man who made me question whether I'd ever be safe again. Zach looked exactly the same. That clean, well-groomed appearance that people mistook for stability. The smug little smile that made everyone believe he was harmless. And Jenna, she was glowing. Like the kind of glow people fake when they're desperate to convince the world they're happy. At first, I didn't even have the words. I just sat there in shock. Numb. Not crying. Not angry. Just completely disconnected from my own body. It was like grief all over again, except this time, it wasn't grief for a child I'd never get to hold. It was grief for a version of my life that would never be the same again. Then the rage came. And it came fast. I grabbed my phone and typed out a message to Jenna. It wasn't long. Just, "You're with him." The dots popped up almost instantly. That was her first mistake. She replied, "Rachel, please don't freak out. I was going to tell you." That sentence hit like a punch to the ribs. I was going to tell you. So it was true. I called her. Straight up. No time for text games. I needed to hear her voice when she tried to explain this insanity. She picked up on the first ring. "Rachel, listen, how long?" I snapped. She paused. "How long, Jenna?" "6 months," she finally said. But it didn't start like that, I swear. I closed my eyes, biting the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. "Walk me through this, Jenna," I said, my voice shaking. "Explain to me, like I'm 5, how you went from holding me while I sobbed over a miscarriage to cuddling up with the man who caused it." "He didn't cause it," she said quietly. That's when I almost threw my phone across the room. "You don't get to rewrite that," I growled. "You don't get to tell me what he did or didn't cause. You weren't there when he pushed me. You didn't see the ER nurse whisper to me that stress like this is dangerous in early pregnancy. You didn't see me sitting alone in a hospital bed while you were MIA. She went silent. And that silence? It told me everything. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew, and you still. I didn't know everything, okay?" She snapped suddenly, defensive now. "You shut me out after you moved. You never told me the details. You barely talked to me. And Zach," he reached out. "He said he wanted to make amends. He said he was in therapy. He sounded like he'd changed." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. "He said he changed, and you believed him? Just like that?" "He told me you twisted things," she said, her voice quieter now. "He said you were angry and hurt and exaggerated." Oh my God, Jenna. I pressed my fingers into my forehead, feeling my pulse throb behind my eyes. "You let him reframe what he did. And you didn't even come to me. You didn't even ask." "I didn't want to hurt you," she said weakly. "No. You didn't want to be wrong," I snapped. We sat in silence for a few seconds that felt like hours. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. "Finally," she said, "I thought you were over it. I mean, it's been years. You never talked about him anymore." "Because I was trying to heal," I said. "And because I trusted you enough to know you'd never go near him. I didn't think I needed to warn you about something that felt obvious." She had the audacity to say, "We didn't plan this. It just happened." I let out the ugliest laugh. "Yeah, sure. Like love stories always start, over the emotional corpse of your best friend." Then she dropped the bomb. "We're living together." I went completely still. "What?" I said, flat and cold. "I moved in with him last month." I stood up. My whole body was buzzing, like the air had been sucked out of the room and replaced with static. "You're living with him? After everything I told you? After watching me break into pieces?" "He's not who you think he is anymore," she said. "You haven't seen him lately." "No," I hissed. "I saw him at his worst. You're seeing him at his most calculated." She started crying. I could hear it in her voice. "Rachel, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just..." I thought maybe if I could help him become better, you thought you could fix him, I said. Just like I did. Just like he wants you to. She didn't respond. I hung up, and then I sat on the floor of my living room and cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not for Zach. Not for the baby. For her. For the friendship I just watched die in real time. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Betrayal from someone you love isn't just painful. It's disorienting. It breaks the rules of your world. You start questioning everything. Was she ever really my friend? Did she ever care? I spent the rest of the night deleting our old photos. Our texts. I boxed up the friendship bracelets we made back in middle school. The birthday cards. The Polaroids. Every single reminder of the girl who promised she'd be my maid of honor one day and ended up sleeping with the man who broke me. The next morning, I woke up to a message from her. Just one line. I hope someday you can forgive me. And for the first time, I realized something. I hope she never needs my forgiveness. Because I hope she never has to feel what I felt. But if she stays with him, she will. And by then, there won't be anyone left to hold her on the bathroom floor. 2 weeks passed. I didn't reach out. I didn't respond to her message. I didn't check in on her ConnectUs page or peek at Zach's profile. I didn't need to. Because the truth is, when you've lived through the worst version of a person, you don't need updates to know what's coming. But apparently, they weren't done with me. I was in line at a cafe near my office when my coworker Riley leaned over and asked, "Hey, wasn't your ex's name Zach?" My stomach dropped. "Yeah. Why?" She hesitated. He and this woman, Jenna? They're doing a podcast now." I blinked at her. "A what?" "A podcast," she repeated. It came up on my Explore feed. Relationship stuff. Like, healing from toxic love or something? I felt like the air got sucked out of the room. Healing from toxic love. I pulled out my phone and found it immediately. They weren't even trying to be subtle. The podcast was called From Broken to Better, A Healing Journey. Their smiling faces filled the cover image. Jenna's head tilted toward Zach's shoulder, him looking all soft and introspective like he was some reformed poet who used to struggle but learned to love right. They had 2 episodes out. I couldn't stop myself. I listened, and what I heard was a carefully worded hit piece wrapped in pastel branding and faux therapeutic language. Zach's voice was calm, measured. "I used to be a different person," he said. "I was emotionally closed off. I didn't have the tools to show up for people." Jenna chimed in. "When we reconnected, he was vulnerable. Transparent. He took accountability." Then came the line that made my hands shake. He'd been in a toxic relationship before. A lot of hurt. A lot of emotional chaos. And sometimes, you just need someone who sees you without judging you for your past. They never said my name, but they didn't have to. I was the villain in their story. The emotionally chaotic one. The angry ex who couldn't heal, who wouldn't let go. I sat at my kitchen table that night, phone in one hand, wine glass in the other, listening to the second episode. This one was called Letting Go of Old Narratives, like I'd been carrying around some delusion instead of surviving abuse. Zach talked about reframing his past and how memory can be shaped by pain. Jenna talked about choosing peace over resentment and not letting other people's bitterness define your path. They painted themselves as these enlightened survivors. And me? I was a footnote in their redemption arc. The problem with abuse isn't just the pain, it's the erasure that comes after. When the abuser moves on, repackages themselves as changed, and convinces the world there's someone new. And anyone who challenges that gets branded as bitter. That's what they were doing. They were rewriting the ending. And I wasn't going to let them. So I started writing. Not a podcast. Not a revenge post. Just a story. My story. I wrote about the beginning. The charm. The control. The fear. The miscarriage. The silence. The friendship. The betrayal. I didn't name them. I didn't need to. I published it anonymously on a survivor blog I used to read during the worst nights. The editor emailed me personally afterward and said, "If you ever want to publish more, you have a space here." But the story didn't stay anonymous for long. It caught traction. Comments poured in. People who had been through the same thing. People who'd lost friends to charmers like Zach. People who said, "Thank you for saying it like this. For naming the quiet violence." Then someone recognized it. An old friend from college messaged me, "Hey, I read that piece. I know who it's about. And I just want you to know, I always believed you." A few days later, I got a message from someone I didn't recognize. The profile picture was a sunset. The name was initials only. They wrote, "Zach did the same to me." I thought I was the only one. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. I started hearing from women 2, then 3, then 5 who had known him, dated him, worked with him, been slowly unraveled by him. One of them said, "He told me his ex was crazy and that his best friend helped him heal. I was the next one after you." Another said, he told me I reminded him of a woman he used to love, someone who never gave him the chance to be better. I realized then I hadn't been the first, and I wouldn't have been the last if Jenna hadn't walked into it. So I did something I didn't expect. I messaged her, not to reconcile, not to fight, to warn her. There are more women. Before me. After me. You're not saving him. You're the next chapter. She saw it. Didn't reply. But that week, their podcast skipped its upload. Then the episodes were pulled. The account went dark. 3 weeks later, the relationship status on her Connect Use page disappeared. And I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. Because I knew what came next. The shame. The denial. The quiet unraveling when you realize everything you built was a lie, and worse, that people tried to tell you. But she ignored it. Just like I had once. And now? She was the one staring at the ruins. I thought I was done. I thought after the podcast disappeared, after Jenna went quiet, after the messages stopped rolling in, that maybe I could finally rest. But that's the thing about trauma. Just because the people who caused it leave the room doesn't mean the pain packs its bags and goes with them. It lingers. It sits at the foot of your bed. It slips into your mirror when you're brushing your hair, whispering, "Don't forget me." So no, I wasn't done. Not until I finally said it. Out loud. With my name on it. It started with an invite. The editor from the Survivor blog that published my anonymous story reached out again. Her name was Elle. She asked if I'd be willing to speak on a panel, small, virtual, intimate. Survivors talking about silence, shame, and the way people try to rewrite our truths. At first I said no. I didn't want to reopen everything. I didn't want to see my face on a Zoom screen next to the words emotional abuse survivor. But then I thought about all the women who had messaged me. The ones who said Zach did the same to them. The ones who said they weren't believed. The ones who were still too scared to say anything at all. So I said yes. The day of the panel, I sat on my bed, laptop balanced on a pillow, wearing a soft sweater and minimal makeup, just enough to feel like myself, but not like I was hiding. Kennedy was with Bree for the evening. Marcus sat in the hallway, not listening, just being there. There were 5 of us on the panel. Different ages, backgrounds, stories. But every one of us had that same look in our eyes, like we were still walking barefoot over broken glass. But damn it, we were walking. When it was my turn to speak, I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. But I didn't stutter. I told them everything. Zach. The control. The loss. The silence. The betrayal. Jenna. How I had spent years convincing myself it wasn't that bad because no one else seemed to think it was. How my voice only came back when I stopped waiting for someone to hand it to me. I didn't cry. Not until the end. When one of the attendees, a young woman, probably early 20s, asked, "Do you think it ever really goes away?" I looked at her through the camera and said, "No. But I think it gets quieter. And I think you get louder." After the panel, I got an email from Elle. Subject line. That was powerful. "Thank you for being brave." She offered me a recurring column. A space to write whatever I wanted. No pressure. Just space. I said yes. Because I wasn't done talking. A few weeks later, I published my first official article, this time under my real name. Title? When the girl who held you becomes the one who hurts you. Surviving friendship after abuse. I told the story honestly. No fluff. No euphemisms. Just truth. It went viral. Not because it was salacious, but because it was real. Women flooded the comments. Stories poured in. My best friend slept with my ex after he hit me. She said I was being dramatic. I didn't talk to her for 5 years. No one talks about how painful it is when the person who swore they'd protect you chooses your abuser. And then, Jenna emailed me. I stared at her name in my inbox for 10 full minutes before I opened it. Subject, you're right. The body of the email was short. 5 lines. I read your article. I recognize myself in it. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm sorry. I hope you're doing better than I am. I didn't reply. Because forgiveness isn't an email. It's a process. And sometimes, it's not for them. It's for you. But I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I said her name out loud. To Marcus. To myself. In my journal. In my therapy session. And when I said it, it didn't hurt the same way it used to. It wasn't a knife anymore. Just a name. Just a woman who made a choice. A wrong one. But no longer mine to carry. That weekend, I visited the retreat center in Northern California where I first started my healing journey after leaving Zach. I hadn't been back since that first year, when I cried through every meditation and couldn't sit still for 5 minutes without feeling like my skin was crawling. This time, I breathed. Deep. Unshaking. Present. I lit a candle in the little quiet chapel they keep tucked behind the garden. And I said goodbye. To the old Rachel. To the version of me who stayed too long, believed too hard, and hurt too quietly. I let her rest. Because I'm not her anymore. Jenna had always been the golden girl. Back in school, she was the one everyone loved, teachers, coaches, parents. She had this unshakable way of seeming like she had it all figured out. That kind of person who never got their hands dirty, even when standing in the middle of a mess. But this time she did. And when the dust started to settle, she was the only one standing in the wreckage. It started with the blog post. Mine. The one I wrote under my real name. I hadn't planned to make waves. I just wanted to speak. But the ripple it sent out? Bigger than I expected. Within days, people began to recognize Jenna. I hadn't mentioned her name, but I had mentioned enough details, enough truth, that those who knew us could fill in the blanks. Mutual friends started whispering. And eventually, they stopped whispering and started talking. Turns out, Jenna hadn't just lost me. She burned bridges with half of our old circle over the years, subtle things, passive lies, little manipulations. The podcast was the final straw. A few women she once called friends sent me messages privately, saying they couldn't believe how far she'd gone. But the real fallout didn't start until the truth about Zach came out. And no, not because of me. Someone else. A former coworker of his. A woman named Elise posted publicly on her own page. She told her story, years of psychological manipulation, isolation, subtle threats, all wrapped up in his usual package of deep sensitivity and emotional honesty. She'd stayed silent until now. But after seeing the podcast, after hearing that he was being platformed and praised for growth, she couldn't stomach it anymore. She named him. Out loud. With dates. Screenshots. Receipts. It exploded. Because she had people behind her. 2 more women came forward, one of whom had once reported Zach to HR for inappropriate behavior at a tech startup back in Houston. The other? A friend of Jenna's, apparently, who admitted she had always felt weird about how quickly Jenna defended him, even when he said things that raised red flags. And just like that, the narrative flipped. Zach tried to deny it, of course. He made a weak statement on his personal page, claiming the accusations were unfounded, that he struggled in the past, but was committed to learning and growth. No one bought it. And Jenna? She went silent. Completely. She deleted her podcast account. Scrubbed her social media. Disappeared from the platforms where she'd spent years curating this identity of empathic peacemaker and healing partner. I didn't reach out. I didn't have to. Because this time, she came to me. She didn't call. She showed up. At my work. It was a Tuesday morning. I was standing in the cafe on the ground floor of our building, grabbing my usual coffee before a meeting, when I turned and there she was. Same face. Different posture. She looked small. Pale. Shoulders caved in. Hair unbrushed. That Jenna glow was gone, like someone had drained the light right out of her. Rachel, she said softly, like she wasn't sure I'd answer. I just stared. She took a shaky breath. I'm not here to ask for anything. I just wanted to say. I was wrong. About him. About everything. I waited. Let her sit in the discomfort of the silence she had earned. I thought I could fix him, she said. I thought you were bitter. I thought, if I could love him the right way, it would mean everything you said wasn't true. I didn't say a word. She kept going. I let him tell me who you were instead of asking you. And I convinced myself that I was the exception. That I was safe. And I wasn't. There it was. The truth. Finally. Her voice cracked. He never hit me. But he made me think I was crazy. He would disappear for days. Gaslight me about conversations I knew we had. He told me the story you shared online was fake, that you were trying to get back at him. And I believed it. God, I wanted to believe it. Her eyes filled. I'm so sorry. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity either. I felt relief. Because this was the first time she had looked me in the eye and acknowledged what she had done. Not to him. To me. I took a breath. You believed what made you feel safe. Even if it meant abandoning me. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. And you tried to make a life on top of my grief. That podcast? That was a knife. You marketed my trauma. I know, she whispered. I deleted everything. I left him. I'm seeing a therapist now. I gave her a slow, long look. Then I said, I don't hate you. She looked surprised. You don't? No, I said. But I don't trust you either. And I don't think I ever will. She nodded again, biting her lip. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I know. Do you think? She hesitated. Do you think I'm like him? I thought about it for a second. No. But you enabled him. And that's something you'll have to live with. Not me. She looked like she wanted to hug me. I stepped back. We weren't friends. Not anymore. But she said thank you. And she left. And I stood there in the cafe, sipping my coffee, heart racing, not with fear. not with panic, but with a strange, steady calm, because I'd waited years for that moment, and when it came, I didn't need revenge. I already had the one thing they could never take back: my voice. It's been 1 year. 1 year since I saw Jenna in that cafe. 1 year since I told her I didn't hate her, but I didn't trust her. 1 year since the final piece of my old life looked me in the eyes and admitted what I already knew. A full year since I realized something I'd never let myself say out loud before. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. And not just in the passive way. Not the kind where you whisper it to yourself in the mirror to survive another day. I mean in the real, powerful, bone-deep way. The kind that sits in your spine and makes you walk straighter. The kind that makes you tell the truth, even when your voice shakes. The kind that writes its own ending. Zach, he's gone. Vanished from every social platform. No podcast. No public apologies. No follow-up rebrand. I heard through someone, maybe Elise, maybe one of the other women, that he tried to move to Denver, start fresh. Didn't work. Too many receipts. Too many women with stories. You can't outrun truth. Not forever. And Jenna? She reached out again. Once. A short message on the Survivor blog I still write for. Said she's volunteering now. That she's speaking with other women in her community. That she's finally learning what accountability really looks like, and that it's quiet. It doesn't come with a redemption arc or public applause. It just is. I didn't respond. But I read it. And for the first time, I didn't feel sick to my stomach seeing her name. I felt peace. Marcus and I are still together. He's patient. Steady. There were moments where I tried to push him away, where the reflex to mistrust kicked in hard. But he never flinched. He never raised his voice. Never made me feel like my healing was inconvenient. He just loved me. Slowly. Consistently. Without needing to be the hero of the story. Kennedy knows him now. Calls him M. They bake muffins on Sundays and plant flowers in the little strip of dirt behind our apartment building. She's 6, and she's sharp. She picks up on energy, and not once has she looked at Marcus with anything but total, glowing trust. I didn't know if I'd ever get here. But here I am. I write now. Every week. Sometimes about trauma. Sometimes about healing. Sometimes just about the little things, like learning to love your laugh again, or the power of soft things like blankets and hot tea and good friends who don't flinch when you're not okay. People read it. They share it. Women send me messages from all over the country, some still in the storm, some clawing their way out of it, some just sitting in the aftershocks. And every time I hear the words I thought I was alone, I remember what it felt like. What it still feels like, sometimes. And I write back. You're not. I even gave a talk last fall, real stage, real audience, lights and everything. I stood there in front of 100 people and told the truth with my whole chest. I told them about Zach, about Jenna, about the miscarriage, the podcast, the betrayal. And then I told them about me, the girl who rebuilt herself in silence, the woman who learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live without bleeding every time you remember. Afterward, a woman approached me, crying. She said, "My daughter's going through something like this. I didn't understand before. Now I do." I hugged her. And I thought about how far I'd come from that hospital bed, from that couch, from the night I cried so hard I couldn't breathe because I thought no one would ever believe me. Now they do. And more importantly, I believe me. I'll never get back the things Zach took from me, but he doesn't get to keep anything else. Not my voice, not my name, not my story. And Jenna? She can find her redemption if she wants. I hope she does. I hope she becomes someone better. But she'll do it without me, because I've got a life to live. And I'm done letting ghosts take up space. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it too.